Right, I'm at my usual stopping point on my road trips, and here to meet a buddy. So hopefully he's inside. That time again. This episode of Salty on Religion has to do with where Christians have gone astray. And I think it's going to be a multi-part series within this series. Kind of like Manic Mark breaking into this video with this video. I'm breaking into this series with this series. And it's something I wanted to talk to before, and I actually wrote some notes about it. But it kind of brought it to the forefront. I met with DX Porker today and had lunch with him, and we were talking about religion in general, and kind of the issue, or the conversation came up about tithing and how a lot of churches put the emphasis on fundraising, if you know what I mean. They kind of have a lot of sermons about giving and try to guilt you into giving. Some churches guilt you into giving. There was actually a news story. I can't remember where it was. If it was in Houston, I have to find. If I can find it, I'll put it in the comment section. Where this guy, this one preacher, I think they have like 10 people in the church, and the guy, the preacher asked, well, who's going to give their tax return, donate their tax return to the church? And a couple of people didn't raise their hands, and he called them the devil, and he made them just feel like dirt, and it made the news. And it's funny watching it from the outside, but if you were a member of that church, it's like, well, how do you keep members when you treat your members like that, besides intimidation? And that's a whole nother part of this series where I think a lot of Christians have gone astray. And I mentioned in my previous video, one of my previous videos about religion, Christians aren't immune to anything, and because we're people, and there's a lot of misconceptions about what a Christian is, even within the Christian community, in my opinion, that gives fuel to atheists and even people who are agnostic. Hey, why would I want to join that crowd if these types of people are the types of people that I encounter? And I do want to say to, atheists and agnostic people who watch this video, some Christians, even Christians, don't like. So don't feel alone. Don't think, just as, and I'm guilty of it too, we lump a lot of this political group or that political group or this religion and that religion together. It's more complex than that. We talk in generalities, but just know, from this Christian's point of view, there are quite some Christians that turn me off. Not knocking them, but I just don't prefer, or I don't believe what they believe, and I don't interpret the Bible or the gospel, so to speak, the way they do. And reeling me back to the subject of tithing, some churches really push that, and it reminds me of a time when I was listening to the radio. I listen to the radio a lot, and I was listening a little bit. I was listening to Dr. Laura Schlesinger. She's a Jewish lady of Jewish descent or Jewish upbringing, and she talks. She's like a psychologist, and people call in and ask for her advice. And one particular time, this lady called in and was talking about tithing, kind of into the in the subject, a similar subject where her church was kind of bullying her to giving her 10%. And she says, I give 10%, I just don't give it to the church. I give it to Salvation Army, I give it to homeless shelters, I give it to food pantries. I guess at this church, they kind of know how much you make, how much you take home, so they're like, hey, you're not giving your 10%. Well, for one thing, it's none of their business. And another thing, I think a lot of churches, not all churches, a lot of churches, they're made of people too, and they have ulterior motives, and they're run by committees or sometimes individuals, and depending on the governance of the church, not the church universal, the body of Christ, I'm talking about the building and denomination, they lose their way. They get focused in the wrong places and misinterpret or purposely mislead the people who they're supposed to serve into bullying them into giving money, because that's what runs the church. That's what pays the pastors, that's what pays for the nice building, that's what pays for the hymnals and stuff like that. But back to the point of giving 10% or tithing, T-I-T-H-E, tithy. The Bible talks about tithing in many different ways, and as Dr. Laura was telling this one viewer, there's nowhere that she knows of in the Bible that says you have to give your 10% to the church. And that was kind of profound to me, because at that time, and there's the subject of another episode, but at that time I was really struggling with giving to the church because I didn't make that much money, and I wanted to give, but it would have put me into financial strain. And I talk about almost going into welfare. I was going to college. I didn't make any money in the first place. We're trying to live on my wife's income. So, giving what we gave was painful enough. And I know people who made less than us that do give more, and that's not really what this is about. What it's about. What it's about is, where does it say for Christians who think you should give money 10% to the church? Where does it say you have to give 10% to the church? And I remember a sermon that we had. We have Pledge Week or Pledge Month, whatever it is, but where our preaching staff gets up and kind of. My church doesn't, in my opinion, they don't bully you into giving, but they compel you into why giving is a good idea, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that, just kind of as a reminder, because as I was telling DX, that I get if you don't ask, people get the perception of, well, they didn't ask, so they must not need it. So there's a balance between a church asking, hey, here's what it costs to run the church. If you like the programs, we're going to need this much to keep that program going. That's cool. I'm cool with that. And once a month, hey, make your pledges, and that way we can budget and plan. I'm cool with that. That's not what I'm here to talk about. But when churches kind of lose their way and demand that you give 10% or more to the church specifically, that's, I think, where churches go astray. And one of the passages in the Bible, I wrote it down, I'll put it here, but one of the passages says you should not give under duress or something like that. You should give willingly, freely. It's not a, doing God's work should not be a something that you're bullied into. Let's put it that way. So that's one passage. Another passage has to do with what you do with your 10%. In fact, I think there's more than one, but and if there's more than one, I'll put both of them up here. But one in particular that I remember says, take your 10% and if you can't, if you have, and take it to a place where you can honor the Lord. And if you can't take it to that place, if you can't take all of your like sheep and grain and stuff, sell it for money, and then take 10% of what you sold it for, or take 10%'s worth of money to the place where you can honor the Lord and buy whatever it is you want and use it and celebrate the Lord with that money, or with whatever you buy with that money. Now, I'm sure there's people out there that disagree with my interpretation, but that's the way it reads to me in the Bible. And I'm sure there's more. I'm sure there's more about tithing. But to me, I give what I can to the church, and to me, I give other places too to do the Lord's work. The Lord's work is not confined to the four walls or to the realm of the church, so to speak. The Lord's work is everywhere. But people in church, some churches have made it to be, well, you need to give 10% to the Lord's work by giving it to the church. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it has to be your choice. It has to be what the Lord compels you to do. That's debatable, but it has to be from the heart. You have to want to do it, not because you're being bullied or intimidated by somebody else in the church. So, anyway, that's my take on tithing. You can give to the church if that's what you want to do, but nothing in my research says you have to give it to the church. As long as you're doing good work with it. And it's hard to put it's easy to put 10%, a 10% value if you make money, if you work and you make money. But say, what if you work, like a noble profession, a housewife, a mother, stay-at-home mom? What is the value of what you have? Do you base it on, or stay-at-home dads? Not picking on them too, or not picking on just stay-at-home mothers, but stay-at-home dads too. How do you determine 10%? I give my time and my money, and I give things. So it's hard, 10%, I think is a starting point to shoot for. The more the better. But to me, 10% is more than just money, monetary things. So anyway, if you have any information on a different perspective, let me know. Make a video as usual. Leave a comment. And that's all I got for this week. Thanks. See you later.